that uniform hanging on the bookcase behind me, that is an original jungle fatigue uniform of mine from Vietnam that I was issued in 1965, and I wore in Vietnam. I wore that when I came back from Vietnam, and then changed into a Class A uniform for separation from the service. So that is an original. You know, old guys have weird things. You know, we hang on to things. You know, because Vietnam, you know, in a sick sort of way, was a high point in my life. You know, for better or for worse, it made me what I am. So what your first question is, you know, did you enlist or were you drafted? Well, I enlisted in 1962. I actually graduated the end of January of 1963, January 24th, 1963, from Chicago High School. I had more or less determined, like in 8th grade in grammar school, that I was going to become a paratrooper. Okay, here I was when I graduated from high school, 18 years old, 5'7", 116 pounds. I wore glasses. You know, everybody's saying, "Are you crazy? What makes you think you can do it?" I said, "Because I'm going to do it." Even my father said, "There's no way in hell you're going to be able to do it." So I had to prove him wrong. But in '62, I started, you know, the process of enlisting, and the the sergeant at the induction center that I talked to, you know, he said, "Hey, you know, you don't have to go airborne infantry. You don't want to do that. Don't be stupid," because here he was, a World War II vet. He had been with the 101st during World War II, Normandy, Holland, Bastogne, the whole 9 yards. He's wearing the combat patch. If you look at that uniform back there, on both shoulders, there's eagles. The one on the left shoulder shows what unit you were presently serving with. The one on the right shoulder is what is called a combat patch. That's what you wore from the unit you were actually in combat with. And he was wearing double eagles also. So he had been there. So he's speaking from experience. But you know, here I am, 18 years old, hard-headed, you know, just flat dumb. I said, "No, that's what I want." So there were many times during my military experience that I thought back and said, "Gee, Sergeant Mulaney knew what he was talking about." But so I graduated the 24th of January, entered service the 29th, 5 days after graduation. I had originally been planning on waiting 30 days from graduation to entering service. And the more I thought of it, the more I realized that if I had, my father would come up with all kinds of weird things for me to do. I said, "Nah, you know, better get the hell out of the house." So I went in 5 days afterwards. Fortunately, I did, because about a week and a half after I left the unit in Vietnam, my unit walked into a 95th NVA regiment, and they were decimated. A lot of my friends died that day. I felt guilty. I still do, because I wasn't there that day. But fate, it's funny how it works. You know, you do something way down the line, and it comes back to have an effect on you. But no, I did enlist because this is what I want to do. When you're a kid of the 50s in the United States, you had a choice. You go to college or you go in the military. My folks couldn't afford to send me to college. During that time growing up, you had all the World War II movies, John Wayne and everybody. We had the communist threat, you know, once a week in grammar school, they'd have the air raid sirens go off. You'd duck under your desk. You know, the communist threat was alive and well. So And it was just, you know, what am I going to do? Go to college and become a history teacher? I don't think so. Well, eventually, because of my experience in the military, everything that I experienced had historical events tied into them. The Cuban Missile Crisis, the uprising in the Congo, uh, the uprising, revolution in Puerto Rico, the assassination of Kennedy, all these things, bombing of the colored church in Birmingham, Alabama. I experienced all those things from in the military. We went on alert. My unit, we were strike one. We were always on alert for items like that. Something like that would happen. We were alerted, we would go. We were loaded on the aircraft, the whole 9 yards. So Birmingham was the first alert I experienced. So all those alerts during that time, when Vietnam came up, we had just come off of being alerted to go to Stanleyville to rescue Americans and Europeans who were being killed by the Africans. We were going to jump in, secure Stanleyville, go out, bring the people back in. It was to the point where my unit, received grave registration teams to augment what we had. It was that serious. Well, the people up the chain of command changed the minds. So the Air Force provided the aircraft for the Belgians to go in and actually do the rescue. We were removed from that. And then the Dominican Republic, that happened. We got alerted for that. Well, they gave that to the 82nd Airborne. There was a lot of rumor going around at that time that happened because our unit, the 101st, had been alerted for Vietnam. Well, after almost 3 years of alerts on and off, it gets to be, almost second nature that, well, yeah, we don't believe it. Well, with Vietnam, we started hearing more and more and more, and it started proving true. So I was with a unit called the 3rd Brigade Headquarters Company. We had heard that the 1st Brigade was going to be sending units to Vietnam, but the other 2 brigades were not going. And I figured, well, I've got about 9 months left in service. Here I am in the 3rd Brigade. I'm starting to work on my short timers calendar. And a friend of mine that works over in brigade headquarters, who was a clerk typist, walks past my arms room. As he walks past, he says, "Hello, Bulldog." I said, "What do you mean, Bulldog?" He says, "Oh, yeah, you're going to the 1st Brigade." Well, Bulldogs were with the 327 at Bastogne. They were, after the Battle of Bastogne, they were called the Bulldogs of Bastogne. So from then on, they had the Bulldog nickname. I said, "What the hell you mean?" He says, "Hey, I just typed the list. You and 7 others from this company are going to the 1st Brigade." So what they were doing, they were taking people from the 1st Brigade that were either too new to the unit or too short of time remaining in service, taking them out and using people like myself as fillers to fill up open positions. Well, 1 minute I'm peacetime Army. He walks past me, now I'm wartime Army. It happened that fast. So again, it doesn't seem real because we've gone through so many alerts. We've been on the aircraft so many times. We've been down the airfield. They give us our parachutes, live ammunition, the grenades. The chaplains are down there, the whole 9 yards. We'd load on the aircraft, we'd take off. One time we were on our way to Cuba. We dropped down about 150 feet off the water going past the Florida Keys. And the jump master pulls out a map that shows downtown Havana with the presidential palace circled. He says, "Okay, that's your drop zone." We freaked. and the aircraft turned around and came back. So, all this is going through your mind. It can't be real. Well, then we go transfer into the new unit. We start meeting all these new people. Here I served with a lot of people for almost 2 years, and they were family. And now I've got a new family. So you've got to meet new family. You're being molded into part of a new unit, which is an entirely new unit. And you don't know when you're going. Everything is, it's a secret move. You're not supposed to say nothing to nobody. I was scheduled to be a best man for a wedding. It's called the guy getting married. I said, hey, guess what? I can't show up. I can't tell you why, but you're going to have to find another best man. My present wife, my only wife, this month it'll be 52 years we've been married. We started going together in 64. So I can't tell her until I go home on leave where I'm going. And it's just like a dream. We're training, we're doing everything we're supposed to do. We're out at the rifle ranges, requalifying with our weapons. We're really taking it seriously. A lot of times you go out to the ranges and you're shooting, but you're really not, trying. Now, all of a sudden, everything is serious. The first aid, the radio communications, map reading, first aid, physical training, hand-to-hand combat. I mean, it's just for real. And then they start issuing us uniforms like this, jungle fatigues. And the year before this happens, we were out in the Mojave Desert. Our division with another division versus 2 other divisions playing war games. Well, Mojave Desert doesn't look a damn thing like the jungles of Vietnam. So, the training there had no bearing on what we were facing. Up until we actually went to Vietnam, all the training was concentrated on us fighting the Russians in Europe. They issued us jungle fatigues, which was great. They didn't issue us jungle boots. We went over with brand new jump boots. I spent over $100 on a brand new pair of Cochrane jump boots. They lasted 2 months in the jungles of Vietnam, and then the uppers and lowers separated. We tied them together with parachute cord. The only reason we got new jungle boots is we had a couple of reporters from American newspapers with us on a patrol, and they're writing a story about our boots, and photographers are taking photographs. And after those photographs and stories appeared in the papers here, we got boots. Until then, we were walking around almost barefooted. The military was not geared for Vietnam. Unfortunately, everything had to shift from fighting the Russians in Europe to counterinsurgency in jungle. We had the M16 rifle, which is a blessing compared to the M14 rifle, which we had earlier. The 16 was lighter. You were able to carry that plus more ammunition because the ammunition was lighter, whereas the M14 was 9.5 pounds and the bullets were about this big. The M16's bullets were about that big. But the water purification, when we got there, we had 2 quarts of water a day that was purified. Now they say under conditions like that, you should have a gallon an hour available. We had 2 quarts a day. It was purified. The rest of it during the day, we'd make up rice paddies or streams or wherever. we'd have to use halazone tablets to purify the water. When we finally got mail going, we're all asking for Kool-Aid to cut the taste of the halazone because, that stuff tastes bad. But even the mail, we didn't have mail until after, maybe 3 weeks that we were in country. We had to write home with our military Army post office number for folks back home to send us mail. And at that time, the mail was going by ship. It wasn't going by air. The government didn't approve by, air mail for the troops over there, packages, letters. My first goodie box that my parents sent me, it took about 3 months to go by ship to Vietnam. My mother made me brownies. They looked like charcoal briquettes by the time we got them. But eventually, we got that stuff straightened out until the Congress passed the Free Mail Act, where you just write free in the upper left corner of an envelope. You'd have to put a stamp on. Well, in the conditions over there with the heat, the humidity, the rain, traversing streams and rivers, your stamps are going to get wet and they stick together. Same thing with envelopes. So you'd have to ask people to send you, pre-glued envelopes so they stick, you didn't have to lick them. And same thing with stamps, you're always running out of stamps. Well, when they passed the Free Mail Act, that took care of that. But we got off the ship. I sent a video. I don't know if you got it or not.
Yes, I saw that. Mm-hmm.
Of our troop ship arriving the 29th of July. We got off the troop ship the 29th of July, and we slept on the ground until October, end of October. No tents, no cots, no nothing. On the ground, in the dirt, with a poncho liner, and if it was raining, you're in the mud. There's no overhead protection. You're out playing, Tarzan in the jungle, and you've got all the wild animals. You've got the snakes, you got the bugs. They supposedly had 52 varieties of snakes in Vietnam. Somebody said all but 2 of them were poisonous, so we considered all of them poisonous. They had dragonflies with wingspan about that big. They go by your head, you'd swear it was a helicopter. You'd have mosquitoes, they just eat you alive. The bug repellent, it was nasty stuff. And then you're eating sea rations, which is a tinned meal. You have 3 separate meals per day, A unit, B unit, and C unit. And each one was about 4,000 calories because you needed that because you're humping about 60 pounds on your back. It's about 100 degrees. The humidity is about 90%. You're out for 10 to 14 hours a day patrolling, looking for the enemy. So you needed nutritional meals. And you're eating this stuff that has been packaged, some of it World War II, but you thank God you got that. And but the big thing, even with all that, the people that you served with, my foxhole partner, a black kid from East Miami Beach, Florida, Franklin D. Roosevelt, believe it or not. But Frank and I, we shared a foxhole until he came down with malaria and he was evacuated I think he went out about the middle of September. But after the day we'd set up in a position, we'd take off our jungle fatigue shirts and let them dry because they'd be sweat soaked. Under the arms, anywhere you had straps from your load bearing equipment, you'd have salt stripes. We're taking salt tablets like candy to keep us from passing out. And you'd have stripes once the shirt's dried of white salt, and you'd have to break the salt off the shirt. It was that thick. But you'd have to dry them out before the sun went down, because if you're wearing a wet shirt at night, even though the temperature would only drop to the high 80s, you'd freeze your butt off because it was a wet shirt. So we dig the hole, we'd set up, we'd put out grenades, we'd put out a couple of magazines, we'd put out our claymore mines, we'd clear our fields of fire. Then the sun would go down, and then it gets spooky. I mean, when we went up into the Central Highlands to secure base camp for the 1st Air Cavalry Division, but we went up there to secure this area for their base camp, for them to set up. They were still on the ships coming over. And this area had been controlled by the communists since the French left in 1954. So it was virgin territory. The South Vietnamese did not go up there. And I made my first chopper assault on that mission. First time I was ever on a helicopter was my first chopper assault. Just like my first parachute jump was my first time in an airplane. I had never been in an airplane before. I'd never been in a plane for 7 times before I ever landed with one. I always jumped. But we get off the choppers and we're in this bowl in the jungle. And the choppers leave, and all of a sudden it's quiet. There's no monkeys, there's no birds, then we hear a roar like a Tarzan movie. Our eyes get about that big around. What's that? Somebody says, oh, that's a tiger. What do you mean, tiger? Yeah, there are tigers up there. So you're out here in the jungle at nighttime. You can't see squat because it is darker the inside of a cow at midnight with its eyes closed in a coal mine with the lights out in the mine. I mean, it is just black. Eventually, your eyes do adjust. Starlight, moonlight, you do get some vision. But very quiet, very spooky. Nobody's smoking cigarettes. Nobody's talking. If somebody snores, they're gone. You don't want them in your foxhole. So, and then you've got, wildlife out in the jungle around you. And you don't know if it's 4-legged wildlife or 2-legged wildlife. But, and then the next day, you'd have 2 hours on, 2 hours off during the night. And you had to trust the guy that you were in the hole with, that when you were asleep, he'd be awake, and vice versa, because there was nobody else. You're in like a circle of positions, but who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. So the next day was just a repeat of the previous day. In the morning, sunrise comes up, you make your coffee, you eat your sea ration meal, fill in your hole, get your act together, get on your feet, start walking again. Another 10, 14-hour day. And the scenery is always the same. You know, it's boring until the unexpected happens. And that's when terror sets in. 1 minute, everything is good, peaceful, and then the whole world seems to erupt. And while the world is going crazy around you, you're really not scared because you're just reacting to what's going on around you. Once it's over, first couple of times, that's when you got the shakes. You know, you're looking, making sure you're all in one piece, nothing's leaking anywhere. You're hoping none of your friends have been hit. But still, all this going on, it really didn't seem real because we've been through so many war games and alerts and things like this until the first man, a man that he was a native of Guam. He was in the U.S. Army, but he was a native of Guam. And he was the first man in our company that was killed. And unfortunately, he was killed by a short round from one of our artillery outfits that were providing us fire, covering fire. They fired a round and landed short of the target. And that's, the possibility of bad things happening in a bad situation. And until he died, then all of a sudden it was real. Because in war games, people don't die. But here, this guy died. So there were 8 of us that transferred from 3rd Brigade headquarters into B Company, 1st Airborne Battalion, 327th Infantry. And Richard Crossland, he from Texas, he was transferred into my platoon as well. He was assigned to a machine gun team as an ammo bearer. Richard was a great big Texan. In 3rd Brigade headquarters, we gave him the nickname Baby Huey. He was a wonderful person. I mean, he was just a lovable guy. But we called him Baby Huey. He was just big. And, big guy makes a good ammo bearer. So he was in the weapons squad. Mike Young, he was a radio man. James Bailey, he had been the colonel's driver in 3rd Brigade headquarters. He actually volunteered to leave his position and go. When we found that out, you're crazy. But out of the 8 guys that I transferred into B Company with, I was the only one either not killed or wounded. That, to this day, I don't know why. Why was I spared? I did die in October of '65. I was underwater in a rice paddy for over 4 minutes. Nobody knew where I was. It was during the monsoon. We were outside the city of Quanyan. And the monsoon was on. It was raining in the Central Highlands, and the water was running from the highlands to the ocean. And in the morning, we had gone out on patrol. And the road was clear. Coming back in the afternoon, the same stretch of road, it's about chest deep in water. It's flowing from the mountains to the ocean, nothing to slow it down. So we formed a human chain to get across that stretch of the road. Well, the chain broke and 7 of us went into the water and they're pulling everybody out. Then they realized that I'm not there. And I had dumped all my load bearing equipment, my weapon, the whole everything, because I can't swim. So here I am in the bottom of this rice paddy, and I'm kicking off the bottom of this rice paddy, trying to break surface to show people where I'm at. But because of the road, it's like a waterfall. Waterfall is holding me down. So every time I kick up, it's pushing me down. So it dawns on me, I got to walk away from the road to break surface. So I do that. And I had taken a deep gulp of air before I went under. So little by little, I'm letting it out because my lungs were starting to hurt. So I'd kick, I'd get pushed down, I'd walk, kick, push down, walk. So finally, I get to the point where, okay, this is going to be my last attempt. I got one more shot, and I kick to go up, and I come back down. And when I'm on the bottom, up until then, I hear the water, I feel the water, I'm panicky. You know, I'm dying. I know I'm dying. Well, I'm on the bottom of the rice paddy, and all of a sudden, I don't hear the water, I don't feel the water, I'm at total peace. I'm not panicking anymore. I'm thinking of my parents, my then girlfriend, my car, cheeseburger. And the next thing I know, I'm in the bottom of this Vietnamese boatman's dugout, laying on the bottom of the boat, and he's beating me with the palm of his hand on the forehead to revive me. I had no recollection of how I got from the bottom of the rice paddy into that boat. And so he takes me to shore, and all I had of value was a Timex self-winding watch with a twist-to-flex band. You know, I give that to him. That's all I had of value. You know, if I'd had Fort Knox, I'd have given him that. But I didn't have anything else. And later on, people say, oh yeah, you know, we're pulling all these other people out and we realize you're not there and don't know where the hell you are. And all of a sudden this Vietnamese guy out there with a push pole starts screaming, yelling, jabbering away, and he's pulling you up like a big carp. And here is this push pole had gone down my shirt, between the shirt and my back. Somehow, he couldn't see me because the flow of the water was all mud. You know, it just, you couldn't see. And he pulls me up out of the water, puts me in the boat. You know, so I do believe in God. I know miracles do happen. You know, I'm living proof. But why? I don't know. So it's definitely a life-changing experience. You did develop a hardness. Otherwise, you'd have gone crazy. You couldn't ignore it all, okay? It's like being scared, okay? Everybody was scared, you know. When you realize what was going on, everybody was scared. But it's like a chart. You've got a flat line, that's your normal nervous system. And then something happens, and it goes up. Then after it's over, it goes back down. But it doesn't go back to the same plane. It's a little higher off that flat line. And then something happens again, it goes back up. And when it comes back down, it doesn't go as low as the first time. So you're always hypersensitive, hyper alert. It's not visible, but it's mental, it's emotional, but it's under control. It has to be under control. Otherwise, you're going to go nuts. It's an internal struggle. Our chaplain Kurt Bowers. Chaplains are amazing people. Believe it or not, they're in the military by choice, by the church authorizing them to be in the military. The military has no control over chaplains. They're there at the bidding of the church. If the church says yes, okay. If they say no, the chaplain is gone. Well, Chaplain Bowers was always out in the field with us. He didn't have to be. We had two other chaplains, and they were up at brigade headquarters, living a good life. Chaplain Bowers, he's out with the troops, and he's carrying an M16 rifle. He's got grenades. He's wearing a 45. The only difference between him and an infantry captain is he's got a cross on his lapel rather than cross rifles. And the day my platoon died, Chaplain Bowers was with a recon unit, the Tiger Force. And they were the reason my platoon got sucked into this ambush, because they walked into an ambush and my company went in to pull them out. And the Vietnamese, North Vietnamese were using the Tiger Force as bait to get the bigger unit in. And so Chaplain Bowers was with the Tiger Force, and they're getting chopped up bad. And he starts pulling wounded guys to safety. He pulled 10 wounded men to safety in the middle of a firefight. People are getting cut down all around him. His shirt was shot full of holes. He wasn't touched. After the battle was over, after I was already gone, one day he was conducting a church service, and he noticed the command sergeant major from the battalion kind of walking around the church service like a border collie, and he trying to figure out what's going on. Usually command sergeant major didn't show up for church. So when it was church service was done, the command sergeant major yells, "Attention to orders," and starts reading a citation for a Silver Star. And the battalion commander pins it on Chaplain Bowers. And they salute, they shake hands. Chaplain Bowers removes the Silver Star. He was embarrassed. But Chaplain Bowers felt, he didn't deserve that. In fact, he had been put in for the Medal of Honor, the highest award the American military has for valor. But he was denied that because the chief of chaplains in Vietnam was a very bitter little man, because he saw Chaplain Bowers, a photograph, wearing a 45. And he felt chaplains should not wear 45s. So he denied endorsing that Medal of Honor recommendation. But to me, Chaplain Bowers is a hero. But his presence helped all of us retain our sanity. because he was out there. He wasn't preaching, but just his presence stabilized us, gave us a sense of reality as to what is good, what is bad. He's an amazing man. He lives up in Idaho. He had been in the service during Korea as an enlisted man. He didn't go to Korea. He went to Germany instead as a tank mechanic. And he was a wild child until he met a chaplain. He wound up marrying that chaplain's daughter. He then went into the seminary to become a chaplain. But what was really ironic about that is when he went to Germany, he went on board the same troop ship that we went to Vietnam in 1965. So after I graduated, the 24th, I went in the service, the 29th of January, left Chicago by train, went to Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training. Spent 9 weeks at Fort Knox, had 2 weeks leave, went back to Chicago for 2 weeks, and then went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for my advanced infantry training. From Fort Jackson, South Carolina, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia for my 4 weeks of jump school to become a paratrooper. Probably the hardest 4 weeks of my life. We started out with 800 guys in a class. 4 weeks later, we had half the class. And Georgia in June and July, it's very hot, very humid, just totally miserable. And we're out there doing PT and sawdust pits with no t-shirts. We're on our backs in the sawdust, have a stand up, and they don't let us brush off the sawdust. So then we go on our 2-mile run, and the sawdust is going down into the elastic band on our jockeys, so we're miserable. So, but it's, all part of the experience. That's one thing. You're going through this training, and you can't feel sorry for yourself because you look around and everybody else is right there with you, and they're just as miserable as you are. So why whine? And so I graduated jump school 19th of July, 1963. Became a big badass paratrooper. I was probably weighing about 130 pounds at that time. And from there, got on the bus and we went up to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Actually became a member of the 101st Airborne Division. The 22nd of July, 1963, I was assigned originally to the 1st Airborne Battle Group, 506th Infantry. Did you see Band of Brothers? Okay. I was with the 1st 506th Airborne Battle Group. Some of the guys from the Band of Brothers were still with the 06. I mean, this was only 20 years after the war, World War II. So I was with them from July 63 till February 64. During that time, we had the alert for the bombing of the church in Birmingham, Alabama, where the 4 little girls were killed. John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Texas. That day I was taking my secret clearance test for special forces. Didn't know anything about it until I got back to my unit. Everybody was on alert. We were going to Dallas. I didn't believe the president had been shot until my platoon sergeant grabbed me and said, "Go draw your weapon." I believed it. We saw Jack Ruby kill Lee Harvey Oswald on live TV because we were locked in the barracks. We were restricted. Okay, and then February of '64, they had a shuffling of units. I went from 1st Airborne Battle Group 506th Infantry to 3rd Brigade headquarters. I was there until May of '65. And all these other alerts happened during that time. And in May of '65 was when Dennis Thompson said, okay, hello, Bulldog. And that's when the foreign vacation began. Oh, the men that I served with, the ones that survived and the ones that didn't, all of them, there was a guy by the name of Morris Powell from Alabama, black man, and there was no color in Vietnam, at least in the combat units, maybe in the service units, the what we would call the clerks and jerks. These are the rear echelon commandos. They had barracks, they had swimming pools, they had clubs, they had all the nice things that we didn't. And we were green. We were that shirt. The only thing of color on us was our blood. But, the rest of us, we were just green. And Morris Powell, one day, he came over and he's talking to Franklin D. Roosevelt, another black guy. And black men, there are different shades of black, okay? Frank, he was mahogany. Morris, black. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Morris was black. And Morris was kidding Frank because Frank was married. And with Frank's shirt off during the day when we're digging the foxhole or whatever, his upper body is getting darker because of the sun. Everybody is getting a tan. I was tan. My hair was white. Okay. And Frank, he's going from this mahogany to darker shades. And Morris is saying, hey man, I hope you're not sending your pictures to your wife because you told me she don't like black men and you're getting black. And so, this is going on. And, we're all treating each other equally. I mean, there was no white, black. We had Native Americans. We had Hispanics, whites, blacks. We didn't have any Orientals in the unit. But there was no color. Morris Powell one day walks over, he says, hey, you know what? We're all niggers. I said, you know what? You're right. And that's the way it was. Nobody looked at anybody different. If I had water and he didn't, I'd share my water. If he had sea rations and I didn't, he'd share. It was the most perfect society in the most abnormal of situations. I mean, too bad the world cannot exist under that circumstance. We wouldn't have all this crap going on here in America. People don't believe it. I said, hey, I was there. I experienced it. Don't tell me it can't happen. The love And also, I'm proud to say it, the love I had for the men I served with was stronger than the love I have for my wife, for my kids, or my grandkids. Because I was willing to share anything and everything. I was willing to take a bullet for them, like they were willing to take for me. And I'm not, making this up. This is proven. You see guys actually sacrifice themselves, medics running out to get wounded people and bring them back. Our platoon medic, the day my platoon died, he went out into a killing zone to get a man that had been shot through both carotid arteries. He was dying. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And Henry Morton, the world's ugliest man, he wore glasses that black frames. The hair on his head, it grew out in clumps. Okay. His nose looked like a boat rudder. He was short, he was squat. The ugliest man in the world. But we loved him because we knew if we got hit, he would do whatever he could to keep us alive. So he goes out into this killing zone to work on this man, covering him with his own body because the enemy machine gun was still shooting. Henry, both arms, both legs shattered by machine gun bullets. He was shot through both cheeks of his butt, little toe blown off on one foot. He survives. He goes back to Vietnam for more tours. The man he was working on, unfortunately, didn't make it. But Henry was told not to go out because it was a killing zone. He knew, but he didn't hesitate. And he told us, if anything happens to us and we're hurt, don't yell medic. If you call medic, I'm not going to come for you. Call me Henry, call me Morton, call me mother, call me anything you want, but don't say medic, because the enemy had a bounty on the medics and their medical bags for the supplies in those medical bags. And during a firefight, the enemy would start calling medic to try and draw a medic to them so they could kill them and get the medical supplies. So, but the doctors, the nurses, the chopper pilots and crews, the medics, corpsmen, and chaplains, those were the true heroes of Vietnam. I mean, those guys, we had choppers, helicopters. Like I said, the first time I was ever on a helicopter was our first chopper I saw. I was scared to death. We're up about 1,500, 2,000 feet. Frank and I are sitting in the side seat, and we couldn't get the seat belts on because of the stuff on our back. So we're holding ourselves in to the well by our hands, and we're flying along. It's nice and cool up there, not like down below. And all of a sudden, the chopper pilot, he does this. All of a sudden, he turns the aircraft, and we're looking straight into the jungle, 1,500 feet below us. Like that. But our first helicopters that were assigned to support us were gunships and slicks and medevacs. They were called the headhunters. And it didn't matter what the landing zone looked like. If you called for a medevac, you had wounded, these guys would come in, and they didn't care if artillery was exploding on the landing zone. They'd come in for the wounded. They, truly outrageous. you have to pardon me. See, I've got this tape in my head, even though Vietnam, a long time ago, I remember Vietnam better now than I do last month, real time, because it was the high point of my life. You know, it's an endless tape. It's there.
I can imagine.
Let me take the camera and give you a tour of my room. Okay, you can see behind me all the hats up there on the top of the. Yeah, right. The lady up there on the wall, that is my wife. Okay. Okay, that's a replica of an M14 rifle. That's not a real gun, except for the stock. The rest of it is all resin. A friend of mine in Florida made that up for me. And I've got all this stuff up here on the walls. And this is me. This is what a crazy old veteran does. He has his memories, for better or worse. You know, I was just a grunt. I carried a rifle. The job of the infantry, in case you don't know, all the jobs in the Army, every job in the Army is to support the infantry, okay? The job of the infantry is to locate the enemy, close with the enemy, and kill the enemy. That's it. You know, it's kind of cold-blooded, but that's what I was paid to do. When I went in service, I was paid 13 cents an hour, 24 hours a day. Big money, you know. We had what is called MOSs, military occupation specialties. Mine was 111. Being airborne, it was 0.007, 007. James Bond, right? But no, it's what I chose to do. I volunteered for it. I had my heart set on it. I had people tell me I could not do it. I had to prove them wrong. When the bus from Fort Jackson, South Carolina pulled into Fort Benning, Georgia, it was during a southern thunderstorm. At Fort Benning, they have 250-foot jump towers, part of the training. And there was lightning flashing. You know, it looked like an old Boris Karloff Frankenstein movie, flashing lightning behind these 250-foot towers. I saw that and I said, oh God, I'm going to die here. But I said to myself, please, I have to make it through this school or let me die here. I could not bear the thought of failing to accomplish what I had set out to do. When I graduated from high school, in our class pictures, our senior pictures, it has what grammar school you came from, what clubs you belonged to while you were in school, and what college you were going to. And I had a lot of friends, you know, University of Chicago, University of Illinois, Illinois Institute of Technology, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Mine says United States Army Paratroopers. Okay? I put that out there for my classmates and the world to see. I was that serious. So, like I said, I'm hard-headed, but because of Vietnam, uh, you know, everything I have, I own. I don't owe anything except life insurance and crap like that. You know, only a high school education. I became an engineering model maker, building scale models of the various projects engineering companies I work for would build, everything from uh, pharmaceutical, chemical plants, oil refineries, space shuttle, the missiles, defense system up in Alaska to prevent the Korean missiles from hitting the United States. I built that model for allocation of funds from the government for that. And all this was on the job training. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't have college. In grammar school, my mother was told at a student teacher conference that I was too stupid to learn algebra. Okay. So I'm building models. I'm using trigonometry to, because I knew how to read charts. So I can do stuff. Don't tell me I can't do it. Everybody has a short timer calendar. You're counting the days, okay? You get kind of spooked the closer you get. You figure, uh-oh. So during my last month, I had, after I contracted malaria, I was pulled out of the platoon because I couldn't function anymore in the heat. We'd go on an operation and I'd wind up in a rice paddy being cooled off by the rice paddy wire. I was running a high fever and whatever. And because we'd had so many cases of malaria and guys getting wounded and guys getting taken out of, sent out of the unit for illness for various reasons, that the combat strength, you've got so many people, you can do a job with so many people. If you lose any more people, you can't do that job, so you're no longer combat effective, and nobody wants to be declared not combat effective. So getting out of the unit for malaria wasn't going to happen. So they took me out of the platoon, put me up in the headquarters section, and made me the company armorer because I had been a company armorer. I'd school trained, passed 2 CMMI inspections and all this is for armor. So we had all these weapons that needed to be taken care of. So here I am, perfect candidate. So I'm no longer out in the field running patrols and ambushes and stuff like this. So being away from my buddies, the guys in headquarters, in the headquarters platoon, they were guys in my unit, but I didn't know them. I hadn't been out on an ambush with them. I hadn't humped the boonies with them. I hadn't shared a foxhole with them. I knew them, but I didn't know them. They weren't family. So that was an adjustment I didn't like, but I had to deal with it. And one time I got a whole bunch of people upset because my old platoon was going to go out and set up security for a radio outfit. So the platoon had to go out and basically provide security for them. Well, they needed a truck driver, a 2.5-ton truck driver. And I had a driver's license for a 2.5-ton, and I wasn't supposed to leave the company area because of malaria. Well, if you're driving a truck, you're not going to, exert yourself that much. So a 3/4-ton truck and the truck I was driving, we transport the platoon out. And I come back and here's the company commander, the executive officer, the first sergeant, the motor sergeant. They're all wringing their hands, that I'm still alive when we come back in, because they had gotten a memo down from brigade headquarters with less than 30 days. Do not let them out of the company area because we're losing too many short timers and we're starting to get heat from above. So no more short timers. We don't want no more short timers killed. So here I am driving a 2.5 ton truck with no escort, and they're all sweat. So I come back and they, thank God, give me your license. They rip it up. You're not driving nobody nowhere, no how. But no, you know that you're getting close. So finally, the day that I'm to leave my unit, it's the day, and I'm torn. I want to leave, but I don't want to leave. I'm going home. My buddies have to stay. It's not fair. I mean, it was heartbreaking because so far I've survived. I don't know what's going to happen to them. I'm not going to be there for them. And you develop this mental affliction. If I was there, that wouldn't have happened. I could have done something. I could have seen something. I could have heard something. They wouldn't have been caught. So you blame yourself. And I did walk point. And I was fortunate when I did walk point that we never walked into an ambush. Other times it did happen. I got a nickname, the Rabbit, like Rabbit's Foot. If I was walking point, the guys behind me felt comfortable that I was not going to lead them into an ambush. And I did. But you develop these weird thoughts. And I had a T-shirt that I had somebody send to me, and it was a spoof on the airborne, airborne. It says, "My grandma was a paratrooper." It shows an old woman in a rocking chair under a parachute. I'm wearing that when I'm signing out of the company, just to crank up the old NCOs and the officers. What are they going to do? Cut my hair and send me to Vietnam? I'm already there. You kind of tweaks the tail of the tiger. But no, I really stressed out and remorseful and upset because, like I said, I was leaving and they weren't. And I couldn't understand that. We had gone there together. We should leave together. But my separation from service was a certain day. Tour of duty in Vietnam was a year. I was in country 198 days. So I survived and others didn't. And that's something I still have to deal with. I don't know why they say the good die young. Well, the good did die young. I'm not one of them. No, I will argue with you on that. When I came back from Vietnam, you hear about a lot of vets having drug problems, alcohol problems. I never did. Never drank excessively. hell, a can of beer once every, now it's maybe 2 years. You know, that's my alcohol problem. Never took drugs. I'm on prescriptions now for old man diseases, but no recreational stuff. But my wife and I, we got married in April 1969. We're still together. She is the one who's kept me anchored. She gave me a purpose for getting my head adjusted from Vietnam to civilian life. There's no decompression. 36 hours from the time I left my unit, I was on my parents' front steps. From 100 degrees to 25 below in Chicago. No decompression. Going from where people are trying to kill you to where you're trying to figure out what's going on. You know, because nobody is trying to kill me. I was out walking one day, and a little kid, maybe 5 years old, walks out from behind an evergreen bush. He's got a cap gun. He points it at me. And I froze. I could feel myself wanting to react. Because in Vietnam, that could be a kid with a real gun wanting to shoot you. You had to react to save your life. I could feel myself wanting to go after that little 5-year-old kid with that cap gun. I didn't. I stood there and I just shook. I had suffered an overload. I finally got my emotions under control. But there's always that edge. We were in Hawaii on vacation. I saw a guy beating up a girl downtown Honolulu. I put myself between him and her. I picking up her stuff, putting it back in her purse, keeping my back away from him, but separating the two of them. And in my mind, I know how I'm going to kill him with my hands. It's all very methodical. There's no emotion. I'm not, overstressed. It's just like a textbook. Okay, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. End of story. But he's not going to get to her. So my wife was calling the cops. Cops came, took him away. We went down to the beach, and I had to run on the sand to burn off the adrenaline because I had spasms in my arms from the nerves. I had to burn it off. So it's something that is within us. Even now today, at nighttime, I double check all the locks on the houses. I make sure everything is ready before I go to bed. It's like at night in the foxhole, putting out the Claymore mines, putting out your M16, the magazines, the grenades. Everything is in its place. And then you can rest. Well, I've never gone to the VA. Fortunately, I have never experienced a service-connected illness that I've had to go to the VA. Okay, the malaria, they're not going to do anything for you. And as far as Agent Orange, I don't know if I have it or I don't. I've never been tested for it, but I have no visible effects I know people with Agent Orange, and their internal organs are shot. Uh, they, uh, they've lost their hair. They're in bad shape. These are the people that need the VA. I've got private health insurance. I'll let them deal with me. I'm not going to take away from my buddies that need the VA for something stupid for me. So, but when I got home, night I got home, my wife and I got engaged. A friend of mine, his wife, took my wife out to a jewelry store while I was gone. And they're talking about what kind of ring she would like, well, Karen found the ring, went back later, bought it, and it was at my house when I got home, the 27th of January. I was supposed to return to Chicago the 28th. That was the estimated time of return. My wife, Pat, knew the 28th was the day. Well, here I am, the 27th. So I get home to Chicago, take a cab from Chicago O'Hare to my folks' house. I've got a key. I get in the house. Telephone rings. It's my mother. I answer it. She says, "What are you doing home?" I said, "I'm home early." She says, "Oh." I said, "What do you want me to do? Go back?" She says, "No." Because they didn't know I was home. So I go upstairs. I find my car keys, my wallet, my license, the ring. I go over to Pat's house. I tell her, "Mom, here I am. I'm going to Pat's in nursing school." I said, "With your permission," her father wasn't home, so her mother, I said, "With your permission, I'm going to give her an engagement ring." And her mother, she had married her husband, my father-in-law, during World War II. So I go over to nursing school, and I had a Corvair mindset. It had dual glass packs on it, had a very distinctive exhaust mode. So Pat was up in the dormitory studying for finals, and she's in her jammies, and she's got her hair up in curlers and the whole 9 yards. And I'm going around the dormitory trying to find a parking spot. I'd never been there because she started the school after I was gone to Vietnam. And she hears the Corvair. Like I said, it had very distinctive noise. And she said she's going nuts because she's hearing this Corvair. And she knows what that is. She can't figure out why. So I finally get a parking spot. I walk into the lobby of the dormitory. Meanwhile, she's upstairs or going crazy. Her friends are trying to get her dressed and her hair combed out the whole 9 yards. So all her classmates are down in the lobby with me while she's getting ready. So she gets down there, and right in front of her whole class, I said, "Will you marry me?" But because of the medication for the malaria and stuff that we had been taking, here it is, maybe 9 o'clock at night. I said, "I got to take you back to the dormitory. I'm beat. Once you stop taking that stuff, your body just collapsed." So, but my immediate family, nobody knew how to handle me. Everybody was afraid to ask questions. I was afraid to tell. So we're all kind of like strange dogs, just, and it was probably 20 years later at a Thanksgiving dinner that my older sister was having. The whole family's there. And we're at the dining room table and her turkey and the whole 9 yards. And out of the blue, she says, when you were in Vietnam, did you ever kill anybody? And that was the first time anybody in the family had asked me a question like that. My mother, one time, maybe 2 or 3 months after I was back in Chicago, we were out in the kitchen and she says, you've changed. I said, what do you mean I've changed? She says, it's your eyes. I said, what do you mean my eyes? She says, they're like shark eyes. They're dead. They don't laugh like they used to. I said, Mom, I've seen things. That was it. But like I said, I returned to the States 27th of January 1966. I really didn't come home until November 11th of 1986. That was the first time I went to the Vietnam Memorial. It was rough then, it's rough now. I located all my friends' names. I went late at night because I didn't want to see, nobody see me crying. Men don't cry. And I saw all their names. I rubbed them, I said hi to them. And all my friends are on panels towards the apex of the wall at the center. So I had to walk all the way from the end towards the Washington Monument, towards the center of the wall. That distance is equal to a football field in length. As my foot got even with the end of the wall, I started crying. And it intensified the farther I went. By the time I got to the middle, it was a wreck. I was down on my knees, crying for all my friends, crying for my parents, both of whom had passed away between the time I returned to the States and that night. I was crying for myself. I never cried for them. And somebody, another vet, I didn't see him, and I knew he was there because he put his hand on my left shoulder and said, welcome home, brother. And that was the first person since 1966, 20 years, that said, welcome home to me. That was the beginning of my healing. I got back to Chicago from that trip, and I had never really talked to Pat about Vietnam. I knew she wanted to know, but she never asked. I never told her. So I got back to the house maybe 2:30 in the morning. She was awake. I walked in, we sat down, we just talked until sunrise. Everything I had to say came out. So that's when I came home from Vietnam. So it's still, it's still an ongoing experience. the loss of all my friends, I hold them in my heart and in my memories. So that does mean something after all this time. That their memory is the important thing. A friend of mine, Mike Young, he's originally from Newport Beach, a surfer. He's buried at Fort Rosecrans that overlooks San Diego Bay. I mean, it's on a hillside looking over the bay, San Diego. It's beautiful. You couldn't buy an ocean view like that. Here he is. And, it's just ironic that him being a former surfer, having that out his front door. And both his parents, after they passed away, their ashes are interred with him at that same burial spot. That's something our VA does. Okay, as far as after I got home, I had to try to find a job. I had no civilian training that would equate to what I had been trained to do. I joked one time during a reenlistment conference. They were trying to get me to reenlist, and here I was, a company armorer, familiar with all these weapons, and this first lieutenant from the South. They're kind of naive about big city boys, So I told him, oh yeah, I had a job all lined up with Murder Incorporated out of Detroit. I was going to take care of their weapons. And he believed it. But no, I fell into a job for Stewart and Warner making in their model shop because I had built models when I was a kid. My brother-in-law at that time, he was a salesman for the company. He says, hey, they've got a model shop. Why don't you go talk to them? So I went to HR people. They said, well, we don't know what you're supposed to know. So here, take all these tests and we'll see how you do. Well, I passed all their tests. They said, well, we still don't know if you qualify or not. Let's take you up and let you talk to the shop foreman. So I did. He says, oh, okay. I don't know. We'll find something for you to do. So I worked for them for about a month. And then a friend of mine that had served in Vietnam with me, he was a headhunter for an employment agency. He says, there's a company in downtown Chicago that's looking for somebody to work in their engineering department. I said, oh, okay, that's a lot closer than where I'm driving to now. So, okay. So I go down and I talk to the manager of engineering. He's a World War II vet. And the job was to work in the blueprint and copy portion of the engineering firm. So he's walking me around the company and he goes past the model shop. I said, wow, that's neat. Tell you what, I'll make you a deal. You hire me, and after 6 months, if I don't work out, you fire me. But if I am working out, you transfer me into the model shop. So at the end of 6 months, I was still there. So I'm beating on his door. I'm saying, hey, either fire me or transfer me. So after 2 days of that, he put me in the model shop. So that's how I got into model making. I had gone to various agencies looking for employment. I took all the tests multiple times. So it got to the point where you sit down and it's the same test, no matter where you are. And boy, you just answer the test. But even early in the Vietnam War, veterans were discriminated against by companies not wanting to hire us because of all bogus press, we're all wacko, we're all drug addicts, we're all baby killers, So I almost, well, I thought I was applying for a job at Time Incorporated. So, not interested. But even neighbors of mine, a neighbor of mine that lived across the alley from us for as long as I could remember. A couple of days after I was back, I'm walking past their house and she yells out, "Too bad you didn't die over there." So it was a strange time. And then television, like Starsky and Hutch and all these other cops and robbers type TV series, the bad guy is always a whacked out Vietnam vet on drugs, Hollywood. So we had a lot going against us. I was working downtown Chicago and there was a protest. Long-haired members of society, and they're protesting the war, and they're going down State Street. And I had to go across State Street to get back to work, but here this protest is going on, and there's Chicago police about every 20 feet along the curb to keep order. And here this one long-haired, disgusting-looking individual is dragging the American flag. I said, no. Step off the curb, walk up to him, cold cock him, knock him, get on his ass on the ground. I pick up the American flag and I fold it. Walk back. Chicago cop looks at me. He says, a friend of mine, the day that we landed in Vietnam, he was discharged. He didn't go with us. He got off at the airport in New York City, and here's people protesting, and people are going to Fort Dix. They're coming through the airport to go to Fort Dix for basic training. These protesters are out there raising hell. And Pat McBrarity, this Irishman, he gets upset. And he wades into them. And he puts two of them in the hospital. He gets arrested. He has to go to night court. And the judge says, what happened? How come? So Pat tells the story. He says, a group of my friends just landed in Vietnam today. I saw this going on. I reacted. The judge says, well, tell you what, if I put you in jail for 30 days and you get out, do you think you'd do that again? And Pat said, yes, sir, I think I would. He says, well, no sense in putting you in jail, case dismissed. Well, believe it or not, the World War II vets caught flack from the World War I vets, okay? The Korean vets caught World War II vets. Well, my father-in-law and I joined the VFW post, Veterans of Foreign Wars, the same night, because when Pat and I were getting married, we're looking for, where to hold a reception. Well, if you're a member of the VFW post, they charge you $50. If you're not a member, they charge you $200. So my father-in-law and I both become members of the VFW the same night. And we, set up for the reception at the post. We're going to have the ladies auxiliary handle the food, make out like bandits. So maybe 3-4 months after our wedding, I go back into the post, and the post commander greets me. He says, hi, yeah, how you doing? Can I help you? I said, yeah, I'm member of your post. He says, you are? I said, yeah. Told him my name. I said, Vietnam vet, served with the 101st over there. He said, oh, Vietnam vet, huh? We really don't want you guys. So I took out my wallet, took out my membership card for the VFW, and I ripped it up in small pieces. I said, here, stick it up your ass. That was it. Now, in America, all the American Legion, all the VFWs, all the World War II guys. So to keep the posts up and running, they went after the Vietnam vets to get them to join. Now they've got the Afghanistan, Iraqi vets that they're after. Otherwise, when there's no more membership, that post, that property, which is worth money, goes bye-bye. So, yeah, they're actively looking for the newer vets. So it is, crazy. The closest Vietnam could be compared to in World War II would be the Marines on Guadalcanal. Okay, that's the only comparison I can draw, because they were more or less abandoned by the Navy. They dumped them. They were afraid of getting attacked by the Japanese Navy, so they left. The Marines are undersupplied, and here we were the same thing. We got there, we had nothing, basically, until the wheels caught up. The important thing is, I'm just a survivor. I made it back. The important people are the ones whose names are on the memorial in Washington, D.C. Those are the true heroes. After I'm long gone, those people will be remembered because their names are still there. And that's the way it should be.